Hey, my name is Rowan Smith and I want to welcome you to the Training for Trekking podcast. Now, this is the world's very first podcast which is entirely dedicated to helping you train, prepare and conquer your upcoming hike, trek or mountain adventure. So once a week, I'm going to be giving you quality and practical information on the subjects of physical preparation for trekking, dealing with altitude and nutrition on the trail, so you can know everything you need to be doing to have the best chance of a safe, enjoyable and successful adventure. So now you know what you're in for, let's get into today's episode. Alright, hello guys. Today we are talking all about how to maintain your fitness as a hiker. Now, there will come a time in your training journey where you simply want to maintain your fitness. Now, maybe you've just finished that big adventure that you've been prepping for and dreaming about for so long. Maybe you've just gone through a training journey and overcome some foot pain, shin pain, knee pain, back pain, or something that you've been struggling with, and you just want to ensure that it doesn't come back. Maybe you've just gotten a new busy job or just had a baby or something else which prevents you from committing the same amount of time to training. And you're aware that, look, I'm probably not going to be able to keep on improving my fitness, but I really do want to maintain it and make sure it doesn't go backwards. Now, whatever situation you find yourself in here, the good news is it is much easier to maintain strength and fitness rather than develop it in the first place. Now, you know it does take a long time to develop strength, to work on proper injury prevention, and to create your fitness to get you on the trail. It does take a lot of time, it does take a lot of effort. But once you've developed it, it doesn't take a huge amount to maintain it. The issue is most people get to that point and then something distracts them and they fall off the wagon, they stop doing absolutely anything and they go back to square one. But if you can do a small amount of training over the long term, you really can maintain most of this stuff and keep yourself in a really good position. But in this situation, even though it is easier to maintain things, there are a few very particular things a hiker needs to do to ensure that you are actually maintaining things and you aren't really going too far backwards. It seems simple, but you need to follow these particular things. So if you do find yourself in this situation where you're trying to maintain your fitness over the long term, here are a few do's and don'ts to help you. Now, don't. Number one is repeat the same workouts indefinitely. Now, this is a mistake I see from so many people in the fitness world, and this is a mistake I see from hikers as well, and I've had quite a few conversations about. Now, once you reach that peak in fitness that you want to maintain, the temptation is often to continue to repeat the workouts which you've learned, which you know have worked for you and made you feel really good, in the hopes that they'll maintain things. But this is a bit of a mistake. Even if your goal is purely to maintain, repeating those same workouts day after day, week after week is just not a good idea. And I'm working in gyms my whole life. I've seen this so often. I've seen people who've repeated the same workout for 6 months and never changed at all. I've seen people who repeat the same workout for a year and never changed at all. I've seen people literally from when I first started working in gyms when I was 16 years old. There was a bloke doing a workout, which he'd obviously been doing for a long time. He was first in the door every single morning at 5 a.m. He'd do this workout for an hour, walk out. He'd do it every single day of the week, first in the door. Now, that was when I was 16. Recently, I went to a local gym and I was training in the morning and I was going there at open and I was just training myself. And then I look over, all of a sudden, this same guy, and it's a different gym, but it's like just down the road, this same guy is doing the same workout. And this was, 16, I'm 28 years old. That's 12 years later, still doing the same routine. Looks exactly the same, nothing's changed, same strength, everything like that. Pretty much exactly the same. For him, he's just stuck in a rut. And he enjoys doing what he's doing, and that's fair enough. But it's not a good way to go about things, and I would not recommend this to anyone. What you want to do is, if you are trying to maintain, avoid this approach because it will lead to boredom, overuse injury, and even regression. Instead, you really should look at continuing to progress your exercises and workouts. Now, over this podcast, I've talked through so many different ways you can progress things and just swapping up exercises, making things a little bit tougher or whatever it may be. And even if you are looking to maintain your fitness, aim to progress or at least switch up your workouts every 3 to 6 weeks. Now, You can progress this and make things more difficult, but you don't need to work quite as hard. We're not saying you have to work 100% intensity or anything like that, but just change things up. To keep things fresh, to keep the body stimulated, to keep the mind sufficiently stimulated, to reduce that risk of overuse injury, to reduce that risk of boredom, and just so you can maintain it over the long term and keep things relatively fresh. So please, 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 please don't fall into that trap of just repeating the same workouts. Keep on progressing, even if you are looking just to maintain. Now, what I don't want to see people doing in this situation is, if they are trying to maintain, is don't feel like you need to push every single session to the limit, or even have every single session that feels particularly hard. Now, some hikers out there absolutely love to push every single session to the limit, or have a real challenge every single workout, whether that's with speed, with intensity, with weight, whatever it may be. But if you're maintaining things over the long term, this really is an incredibly smart approach. Pushing every single session indefinitely will again lead you open to unnecessary risk of injury, whether that's acute or overuse injury. It'll lead open to mental fatigue and boredom, and it'll also increase the likelihood of abandoning your program altogether, because there will come a point where you can't work at that intensity, whether you get sick, whether you get busy, or whatever it may be. And if that's in your mindset that you have to push every single session, what you're going to do is you're like, well, if I can't push, I'm not going to go. And then that's just the first step in a slippery slope to falling off the wagon altogether. What I recommend in this situation is just push that intensity occasionally. A much, much, much better approach to this long-term maintenance is to train at a moderate intensity for the majority of time, and then just push things every once in a while. Now, moderate intensity is like a 6 or 7 out of 10, maybe an 8. If you're looking at, 10's absolutely gut busting, 1's absolutely nothing, something that gives you a little bit of challenge, but you can do it, and it's not really going to kill you. And that's going to usually be enough to maintain your fitness. And then you want to sort of dose that with occasional bouts of higher intensity, which will keep that sort of training fire alive, keep that competitive edge going, and keep things fun. So depending on the person, this might involve, 1 session a week where you might just push things quite a bit harder, or it might be once every couple of weeks. At the very, very least, it's probably going to be once every month. And I think there's a reasonable amount of evidence to show if you can do, if you're trying to maintain strength specifically, if you can just do casual strength here and there, but if you can do one heavy strength session a month, you can maintain most of your strength gains. You're not going to maintain it all without a little amount of training, but you can probably maintain most things. So train moderately most of the time, push it occasionally, whatever that may mean for you. Another don't in this situation is add extra stress into your life with unsustainable programming. Now, when you're training for a big adventure, or when you have just plenty of time on your hands, it often makes sense to do a whole bunch of training and even prioritize it over other things in your life. Like if you're leading up to a Kilimanjaro climb and you're like, well, this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing, obviously you're going to give up social occasions, you're going to give up bits and pieces, even time away from the family, just to make sure that you're in the best possible situation. And this does allow you to fit in large amounts of training. But when you're training over the long term, when you don't have that goal in sight and you're just trying to train over the long term and maintain things, it's not a great idea to set yourself training loads which you know are unsustainable or take over other portions of your life. Because the second that life does get busy, or if you have a drop in motivation, which will always happen, things are going to be impossible to follow. And then again, you're on that slippery slope. If you miss 1 or 2 sessions, it's a slippery slope to falling off the wagon altogether. Instead, I highly recommend finding a training load which fits around your life. Now, as I said just before, it is much easier to maintain strength and fitness than develop in the first place. So with this in mind, don't feel guilty if you have to reduce the training load slightly during this maintenance time. I recommend finding a training amount which you are 100% sure you can commit to every single week, regardless of what's going on in your life. So even if you had a super busy week at work, even if you're absolutely knackered, even if, the young baby's been up all week, whatever it may be, choose an amount which you're 100% sure you can fit into in these situations. And then set that as your weekly minimum target. For some people, that might be 3 30-minute sessions. For some people, that might be 4 1-hour sessions. It's going to be completely individual. But that's your minimum. And set yourself the goal to hit that every single week. Now, in weeks that you want to do more and you have more time and you're energized, then simply do more. That's absolutely fantastic. But when life gets busy And when things get in your way, having this minimum target will allow you to maintain your training momentum and not make you feel guilty for missing those extra sessions, which is a big part of long-term success. So I highly recommend find a training load which is a minimum and just add on bits and pieces where necessary. Now, when you're looking at maintaining your hiking fitness, there is a certain art and science to doing it best. But hopefully this podcast has given you a bit of insight into practical, a sustainable, and an enjoyable approach so you can maintain your fitness over the long term and not go too far backwards. Now, if you have enjoyed this episode today, I would absolutely love if you could join the Training for Hiking and Trekking Facebook group. Now, this Facebook group is another place where I'm loading up almost daily content around training for your hiking adventures. And if you do find yourself in this situation where you're trying to maintain things and you're looking for a bit of motivation and you're looking for ideas to keep things moving along, this group is the perfect place for you. There's loads of hikers in there in similar situations. We're putting up constant training information around these types of things, and it's a really, really great addition to any hiker who's looking to up their training game. Now, you can find it on Facebook, the Training for Hiking and Trekking group. Alternatively, I'll leave a link in the show notes below. But I would really love to see you there because I think it is a great addition to all the information going out on this podcast. So thank you so much for listening today, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.